Hey guys, it's Rob. Doing a little vlog here in my garage. Excuse the clutter. I wanted to say thank you to everybody that responded to my last video where I asked for suggestions and questions that you might want to ask me. I got a lot of responses. I was kind of overwhelmed with the number of responses that I got. So I wanted to try to go ahead and start answering some of those questions for you. Now, I got a lot of questions that somewhat overlapped. So what I decided to do is kind of break things down. For today's vlog, I'm going to go over those questions that primarily addressed motorcycles. More specifically, my motorcycles. And I'm going to probably do 2 or 3 different vlogs, breaking it down and trying to answer the questions. If you read the description and you read my comment on my video, I did not respond directly to the questions in the comment fields of the video, because that would kind of defeat the whole purpose of trying to make a vlog out of it, right? So anyway, I wanted to get started here and try to answer a few questions. And since these questions are mainly about my bikes, I wanted to do it off the motorcycle, because how could I show you the motorcycle if I'm riding down the road sitting on the motorcycle, right? Okay, so here we go. So Plaid13 asks, ever have a bike you would never want again? Ever had one that lasted forever without any problems? What brands do you like or dislike, and why? Okay, so I haven't had that many bikes in my life. I had a little Honda mini bike. I'm sorry. I haven't had that many bikes. My very first bike was a little Sears mini bike. My second bike was a Yamaha 60cc dirt bike, and if there was any bike that I'd say that I would not want again, it would be that one. Not because that particular model was bad or anything, but because I got it used. I had actually traded the little mini bike for it, and it was not running when I got it. It was pretty well tore up, and after working on it for a while, we got it running, but then it stopped running. It never did run quite right. So that bike I didn't like. Probably an okay bike when it was new. What brands do I like? Well, I kind of lean towards Honda. And I can't really give you a specific reason why, other than the very first motorcycle my butt ever touched was a Honda 90 that my brother Lynn had back when I was probably 6, 7 years old. And he took me for a ride on that bike, and you know, hey, I love being on 2 wheels since then. In fact, I had a ride on that motorcycle before I think I even got my first regular bicycle. I had had tricycles and other little baby type 2-wheelers, but nothing like a real kid's bike until maybe about maybe a year after I ridden my brother's motorcycle. Anyway, sorry, I'm going to make this too long if I'm not careful. So, I don't know, that was a Honda bike. I kind of liked Hondas ever since. I've owned Yamahas. As I said, I owned the Yamaha 60. I owned a Yamaha 550 Enduro, which that was a kick-ass bike. It was a lot more bike than I could handle. I still have hardware in my leg from that bike, which I've talked about before, and I can point you to the videos about where I talk about wrecking on that bike. I got a little Honda scooter, which I just absolutely adore, and I got my Honda DN01, which again I adore. Do I have any brands that I dislike? No, actually I like all motorcycles. I wouldn't mind owning a Harley. I wouldn't mind owning even one of these Can-Am Spyders. I think they're pretty cool. Although I've heard some bad things about them, and some people don't really consider them a motorcycle. But I'm kind of eclectic. I like to ride. So I don't discriminate against any brands or any style of motorcycle. Whatever gets your rocks off, that's good. Personally, if I had all the money in the world, I would have a garage full of bikes. Don't know when I'd ever get to ride them all, but I'd have a garage full of bikes because I really do like motorcycles. So hopefully that kind of covered your question. And some of the other questions are very similar, so if it didn't quite answer your question, more answers are to come. Okay, so SCRC 401. He asks, what event led you to the realization that Honda makes the best motorcycles? Well, like I said, I don't really know that they do make the best motorcycles, but they certainly make a very good product. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, my very first ride on a motorcycle was on a Honda. And in fact, I think one of my brother's girlfriends had a little Honda scooter, like a Metro kind of thing, something like that. It was some kind of little Honda scooter thingy that she would come to the house on. Anywho, I've just always liked Honda. I mean, it's kind of like, I guess when you're really young, the first thing that you're introduced to kind of sticks with you. And unless you have a bad experience with that first thing, that is probably the one that you're going to kind of prefer. The first car I ever owned was a Chevy, and I still tend to prefer Chevys. I've had Fords. Yeah, don't really care for the Fords too much, but I've had them. So I stick with Chevy. Does that mean Fords are bad cars? No. Does that mean Lexus is a bad car? No. I just kind of personally like the Chevys. I personally kind of like Honda. So anyway, moving on. My buddy True out of the UK. OOX True EXOO. Have you ever done a history of the bikes you've owned? Okay, so I just started talking about having a mini bike from Sears. That was the first bike I ever owned. I was 10 years old. My dad got it for me for Christmas, 1974. I rode that thing to death. I would get on it in the morning and ride it till late in the evening. At the time we were living in Alabama, which is where I was originally from, but we moved to Miami, then moved back. Anyway, that's for another blog. But we'd go out to my grandparents' house, and they lived in a double-wide trailer out in the country, down these old red clay roads, and the roads would go for miles back up into the country, up these little mountains and what little mountains that Alabama has up there. And I would ride that mini bike everywhere. I just loved that bike. I traded that for the Yamaha 60, which I mentioned a few minutes ago. The 60 never did run quite right. I didn't get to ride it a whole lot because of the problems with that bike. My next bike after that wasn't until and I had that bike when I was about 14. My next bike was a Yamaha 550 Enduro, XT Enduro. That bike kicked ass. I got that when I was 22, I think. And that was probably around 1984. I think the bike was a 1982 model because I bought it brand new, but it had sat on the dealer's showroom for about 2 years. The market had dropped out of the bikes, or bike market had plummeted, so they still had a bunch of brand new bikes that were a couple of model years old. So I got a good deal on that bike when I bought it. I bought it for $1,200, turned around and sold it, like 1992. I sold it for $900. That ain't a bad return on an older bike. I liked that bike. Had a lot of power. Too much power for me. As I said, I've got a steel plate in my leg, 7 screws holding my ankle together from that bike. I wrecked that bike twice on the road, injuring the same leg both times. That's why I got rid of it. That bike would have killed me. And I actually stopped riding for quite a long time after that second accident. I only got back into riding around 2006 when I bought my little Ruckus, my Honda Little Ruckus, which was the next bike I bought. And after riding the little Honda Ruckus around for 3 years, it kind of reinitialized the bug for a motorcycle. I saw on M13's videos something about a DN01, and that kind of piqued my curiosity. I didn't realize at the time the DN01 was a full-size motorcycle, but I started doing some research on it, and the technology behind it, some of the safety features of that bike kind of drew me in. So there you go. There's the history of me and motorcycles. I started riding when I was 10. I stopped riding when I was about 27, 28. And I picked up riding again just in 2006, which would have meant I was 44. So that's the history of me and motorcycles.